I didn't know which one.
How's it going? You all right?
What's going on?
What's going on?
SOS. Yes. Save our ships. Street outreach services.
So sometimes if I just, I'm looking for that edge, I can make sure. It's just like a CS.
Good to see you. Street outreach services. What are we? I saw it.
It's gonna be here.
Okay. Oh, I'm a little person again.
Hopefully.
How you doing?
We offered I don't think they've ever responded. I said, so did our pharmacy. We may not have to show them. We should be here next month. Well, I was talking to.
Don't have any.
Yeah, you can.
You will.
I did that in college, Chicago.
All right, I think we're ready to get started on our study session. I'm going to ask Summer to call the roll.
Commissioner Blevins?
Here.
Commissioner Norwood is not present. Commissioner Siragusa?
Here.
Commissioner Roberts? Here. Commissioner Stallings?
Here.
Commissioner Orr?
Here.
And Mayor Mason.
Here. Item number 2, at the Commissioner's request, discuss any item of concern on the regular session agenda. I'll open that up if anybody has any questions or comments or. Okay.
Dean's not gonna be here, did you tell you that?
He's going to stay here for the regular. Yeah, he called. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to move on to 3.1, hear from the Enid Street Outreach Service, SOS, on homeless issues.
Yes, Mayor, I've asked Street Outreach Services to come in. Chris Feeney is going to come up. I believe he's the board president of the organization, and he will introduce the team. And we appreciate hearing, we've heard from a couple of groups and at least another one, so we appreciate the perspective, the help as we try to see what the city could do or what our role might be to improve the homeless situation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gerald, and City Council for allowing us to speak today. I'd like to introduce our team over here. We've got a great representation. These folks work tirelessly to help the Enid's homeless population. I'd like to ask that our Chief Operating Officer, Rhonda Stevenson, come up. She is the guru and absolutely knows everything. And she and Cindy have started this operation a number of years ago and are doing a fantastic job. Ron?
So thank you, commissioners and mayor, for having us. So we are Enid Street Outreach. We are the only mobile unit here in town. Which, when I say mobile, we have a van, we have a shower trailer, and we go out and we go to where the unsheltered are. So our last count, we had 165 homeless here in town. 90 are chronic, which means they've been homeless for over a year. We have 45 that are transitional, which have been homeless for less than a year. Those are usually the ones that we can save and get back into housing and get back into the workforce. We have 30 that are temporary, which are couch surfers, or they live in cars. We have several women that live in cars. And we show that we have a 30% increase since 2022. And I know you keep hearing that we have less homeless, but our numbers are showing more. So in 2023, we helped 19,288 people, and that was opportunities to serve. We either gave them clothing or we gave them something to eat. We did 4,125 pounds of pet food to unsheltered and low income here in town. We partnered with SPCA so that they give us the food and we are a second pantry to help distribute that. Let's see. We do what we call the snack wagon every night, where my teams go out, they check on the unsheltered, we give them a sandwich, some snacks, just to make sure they're okay and to make sure that their well-being is right. Last week, we found a lady unresponsive at Government Springs Park, had to call the ambulance. She was taken in, and I think she eventually got arrested for being on something. She was really out of it, and the team was scared, so we took care of that. We have a shower trailer that we take out from spring to fall. It's winterized right now. It's a 2-person shower trailer, so CDSA purchased that for us, and we take that out. That way they can shower when we do our pop-ups. And a pop-up is where we set up in either our Daily Bread or at the Welcome Table or First Presbyterian, and we give out free clothing. We set up the showers so they can shower and get what they need. So basically, we're just out there trying to help people. I know this little chart shows the increase. The big spike here is this summer, it was so hot, we gave out 8,000 bottles of Gatorade and water. We had hydration stations at Springs Park, the Breezeway, and the library. And that was just to keep them hydrated so that we didn't have any more problems. So we kind of want to open it up and let you all ask us what you need to know, and we'll go from there. Yes, ma'am.
Tell them how we get those figures, the numbers.
We do collect data for CDSA on the homeless. So we keep constant records of who we talk to. Everyone signs in when we do a pop-up or when we do any type of service. We have them sign up to take the showers. So we keep records. We try to keep a point of contact for each person that's homeless, so we, in case something happens, we do have an next of kin. And we help them apply for food stamps and senior care and Social Security or disability if they need that also. So,
Rhonda, there's differing degrees of homelessness or people experiencing homelessness, meaning that there's people that don't have a home, don't have anywhere to go, don't have a couch to sleep on, nothing. So they sleep outside or they go to the shelter at Salvation Army or Forgotten Ministries if it's open, if they choose to. So when you say 150, is that 150 that have nowhere to go, or does that include these folks that sometimes sleep on other people's couches that are kind enough? Or what's the bottom line count of people that have nowhere, which I would call is the continuum of there's nothing. They're sleeping outside in a cardboard box or something.
As of January 16th, our final count is 135.
135. And I think that's similar to what we heard when David Brittle was here. I don't know if, I can't remember if it was on video. He might have said, I don't know if it was 150, but it was somewhere between 100 and 150. That seems like a reasonable number to me. I don't know, but you just did a count, or you're
we're
working
getting
on
ready to
another
do a
count?
point in time count next week. I believe it starts on Thursday and goes through. There's going to be a couple of different days, but we will start the point in time next week.
You said your number was about 90 on your chronic?
Yes.
What does that truly mean, the chronic?
People that have been homeless for more than a year.
I know, but what happens? Is there a process where a person that's chronic comes out of chronic, or is it just they're locked into that until something worse happens?
I mean, there's a lot of mental illness, there's a lot of addiction, there's a lot of just,
It's
a lot.
less likely, sir.
Yeah.
Less likely.
It's
I'm
less
sorry?
likely that we're going to get them back off the street. They've been on there for so
they're
long.
going to be there until the end.
We have a gentleman that's been on the streets of Enid for 30 years.
Say that again?
We have a gentleman that lives here in Enid that has been on the streets for 30 years.
I think I've met him.
You have met him.
And I think some folks
You met him
who are
at the
police officers
Breezeway.
probably know him too.
Yeah.
So of this 135 people, how many of them are actually from Enid?
Majority of them. You would be surprised.
Is that 50%? 75%?
I would say 75 to 85%.
Are actually from Enid
From Enid.
for how long?
Some have been here since childhood. There are some out there that I graduated with.
Yeah, I mean, I as well, people that I went to school with, people who have had businesses here in town and lost their businesses and such are living on the streets now. I can give you a handful of those folks. It's pretty sad. It's pretty sad.
And we did just start, we did our orientation in December. We're doing, it's called Pathways to Empowerment, where we're trying to get people back into the workforce. We're trying to teach them all the steps you need to be able to be going back to work. And we have 10 participants right now. We're doing classes. We have 8-week session that we're going to do.
So you've just started that program, so we don't know any statistics as far
Not
as?
yet.
Okay,
This is our first program
Yeah.
of that.
And we're only 2 weeks in on an 8-week program.
okay.
What's the name of the program? Pathways to?
Empowerment.
You might tell who it's sponsored by, who gave us the grant.
The Cherokee Strip Foundation gave us a grant to do that, so.
Do you have a facility?
We do not. We are
So-
mobile.
So you're strictly mobile?
We are strictly mobile. We have a van and a shower trailer and a pickup. And then the snack teams have their vehicles.
So is your group part of a larger group, or is this just an Enid group?
This is just an Enid group that I started.
Okay.
The grassroots.
And we hold hands with CDSA.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So this is like, it's like the third group that we've had come in and talk about this, so that we can have a much better understanding. What's the answer to this? I mean, I get people come up to me all the time, show me photographs. What are you going to do about this? I mean, what are we going to do about this? Right? I mean, do we continue to do this? And are we, I guess my question is, are we feeding into this? Are we correcting it? Are we, where are we at? Do we just keep doing this month after month after month?
Obviously, Enid needs better, shelter facilities that are open on a regular basis. Enid Street Outreach Services, quite honestly, is just trying to keep people alive. With limited resources and limited funds, you see the people that are doing all the work, volunteering all the time. We're just trying to keep people alive, hydrated, fed, clothed,
Right.
trying to keep them out of the elements.
But
That's-
if we provided more shelter, would we have more people, more homeless?
Obviously, no one knows.
But if you have them in a shelter, you can do case management, you can do some of these classes for
Yeah.
them to help them. I mean, it's not just a matter of keeping them overnight.
That's right.
It's a matter of working with them, getting them signed up for programs.
I understand, but do we have any data where we've done that and we've seen success? I mean, I'm all about numbers. Can you show me where we've done that? And we've had a lot of success.
We haven't done it in Enid virtually at all. Many of the people that are living on the streets now need mental health services and drug services, to try to get people clean, that kind of stuff. Enid hasn't had the resources up to now. I mean, at least not on a regular basis. Definitely spotty. Some of the other programs in town do a fine job of trying, but I can get you numbers from other towns, other cities that have invested and done, and built shelters and put in case management systems and things like that. It doesn't solve the problem 100%, but it definitely gets some people off the streets. But I don't have exact data because we haven't had the ability, the money, the funds to be able to do it. We run on a shoestring.
What's the breakdown on the age demographics across the homelessness? 18 to 35, 35 to 50, 50 and above. What would you guys say kind of the breakdown is on that?
The breakdown on,
There's probably more.
The point in time takes that.
yeah, the point in time will take that. I know the oldest we have on the street is 73.
Okay.
She's a lady with a walker, and I have a 17-year-old. So I've got a wide range of ages.
Okay. You think most of them are probably
Probably most are,
40 and above, or
I would say
30?
40 and above.
Okay.
And what percentage of that is as a result of drug addiction? All of it? No?
That's you.
I would say it's kind of like nature versus nurture. Did they start drugs before they got on the street, or did the street have something to do with the drug addiction?
because I don't know if you've ever slept on the street, but it's pretty rough. I tried it one night and I didn't sleep, so.
And did they have mental health problems which they were not able to or decided to take their meds for, which then led to some of the addiction issues?
They can't afford their drugs, so they don't take them, and then they fall back into their old ways. And they
It's
can't
all
go
hand in
to-
hand. We're not sure whether the chicken came first or the egg came first.
that has to-
What about the number of veterans?
We do have some veterans, and we do refer them to the Veterans Program at CDSA. We have one veteran that, he won't go anywhere. He won't go to the shelter. He won't get a house. He just insists on living on the streets, which is hard, and he's disabled, but
As a result of mental illness, maybe? I mean, is that what's
it could be
driving that?
PTSD, because I know he has a lot of that, but he
Okay.
does not like, he doesn't hang with the regular crowd. He usually stays off to himself.
Okay. Well, no, you go ahead.
Janet Cordell might want to
Well-
say something as a, would you mind coming up to the mic, Janet?
You have to come up
I
here.
can talk loud enough, I yelled at doctors for years. Everybody can hear me. One of the things that we know is that, and that Rhonda helps them do, is many times they can't get into someplace. They can't get a job. They can't get even a room because they don't have IDs. They can't get medical services because they don't have, so what Rhonda does, they don't have a birth certificate. And these people don't know how to get it. So that's part of what Rhonda spends a majority of her time doing, is getting birth certificates, getting them a Social Security card. These people don't know how to write a resume. They don't know necessarily about basic hygiene habits, things that we all take for granted when, say, we're looking for a job or when we're trying to get things done. So part of what we're doing, and certainly with the empowerment program, we're trying to teach them those things. Here's how you don't wear your pajamas to go apply for a job. What do you do? And we help them get clothing. Rhonda's working right now, and we're working with the empowerment people to get them proper clothing to apply for jobs. I mean, it's not a simple cut and dried. There's a lot of different issues, but I do agree that the majority of the issues revolve around mental health issues, one way or the other.
Well, Commissioner, Mayor, and Commissioners, I would just say, I appreciate SOS coming in, as David Brittle, Salvation Army, and Jeremiah and Forgotten Ministries, and we'll have at least probably one more, because what I see is at least these four organizations doing things. It's a very difficult problem. And so you're helping doing good things, humane things to help. And there's just conflict between business owners and a lot of folks, I will tell you, if they, as I think I've heard you guys say, stay in the shadows, don't cause issues. I don't know, it still can be an issue, I guess, but the struggle and why I've asked you to come in the other groups is we're trying to figure out, is there anything the city can do? What could the city do? And I don't know, but I think our first step is listening, hearing from the people that are serving the various different, these people in this condition with the various different things you do. And one of the things that I'll just say that at some point going forward, I think all the groups that we've heard from so far and are going to hear from, and the ones that maybe I don't even know about, and I'm not even counting CDSA, who helps everybody, you guys are all focused on trying to solve various aspects of the problem. And So just what I see sometimes, I wonder if we had a more joint approach together with all the groups, which I know there's difficulties because differences and different rules and different backgrounds, but the common good is what we're striving for. And if we could, what I don't see is I see sometimes as inefficiencies, and it's easy for me to criticize because I'm not in the trenches with you guys, but what I would think might be beneficial is if we could figure out who's good at doing what and let them do it and not try to duplicate services. And I think part of what you're trying to do is not duplicating services with the mental health evaluations and the stuff Janet Cordell's talking about. But I think the frustration that I hear, the tough thing is, how do we show success? And that's very difficult. It's one person at a time, and as soon as somebody busts a window out downtown or defecates behind the library or pitches a tent out there, then what we see is this big problem. So, and I know you guys particularly have been a big help to the library, helping with manage the issue. So I appreciate that. I'm just saying this to give the commissioners some time to, if they want to have more questions. I appreciate what you're doing, and I think at some point we're going to try to get you together.
And I think it would help if we had affordable housing in Enid, because a lot of the unsheltered, when they do get Social Security, it's like $400, $500. They can't afford rent with that. So we need that. We definitely need some kind of bathroom downtown so that I don't get calls and you guys don't get calls. Because that is a big issue downtown, is no bathroom, especially on the weekends, on Sunday when the library's closed.
Okay. Commissioner, you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I know we're hyper-focused on homelessness, but your organization also does take care of a lot of other things.
Low income.
And I do appreciate your outreaches at Don Haskins Park. I think we were discussing an ordinance about closing a park down that I knew would affect yours. And we changed a little bit of that wording and everything else in there so that your outreach can still do what they need to do at Don Haskins, which has been amazing for the population that you guys take care of.
We
the
really
needy.
don't do that much at Don Haskins.
Well, you guys have, I know,
We have
another group
assisted,
has.
yeah.
And just the fact that you guys go there, and help, it's noticed. It's noticed in my ward,
Okay,
and I
thank you.
do appreciate that.
Thank you.
I have a question on your graph. What are you graphing? Impact?
That's how many that we helped each month.
It says 5,000 on the scale, the vertical scale. Is that
'Cause-
people or?
That was opportunities that we did assist someone. And that 5,000, over 5,000 was the month of August when it was so hot and we were doing all the hydration and we did extra outreach. We were going out morning and evenings because it was so hot, trying to make sure everybody was okay.
So everyone that you handed a bottle of Gatorade to, they went towards that 5,000, is that what I'm understanding?
Okay, that makes sense, okay.
Yeah, so if it's 150 people times 30 days or something, I could see how you could start achieving those numbers.
Anybody else? Well, I don't want you to leave here and think that we don't appreciate what you do, because we do. We all got on this commission because we wanted to help people. But the more I learn, the more confused I seem to get, right? I'm like Gerald, I think we're duplicating services over and over.
So what services do you think we're duplicating?
Well, it seems like we're all headed the same direction in our own vehicle to go do that, right? And I also sat here and I'm trying to figure out, how did we get to 165 or 135, whatever that number is? I've heard the chief say several years ago, and I don't know how long ago that was, that there were 4 homeless people in town. They knew all 4 of them. So that being said, I'm looking for solutions. How do we fix this? How do we move it from 165 to 100 to 90? How do we make that happen? That's what I'm looking for, right?
Low barrier shelter that accepts pets, and that's open 365 days a year.
Okay, and can you guarantee me by doing those shelters that we won't go from 195 to 250?
Can I guarantee it?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've got to answer to all the constituents in Enid. Right? If we spend those dollars to do that, can we guarantee that we're going to fix the problem, or are we creating more problem? That's what I can't get to. That's what I'm asking.
So you're thinking if we give them more benefits, we're going to get more?
Don't know
calls?
that. That's what I'm asking you.
I
We
don't.
don't know either.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I do know that they've just opened another 300-bed shelter, emergency shelter in Oklahoma City, you know. So, I mean, other communities are doing it. Are they worried that they're gonna import more people? I don't know.
Yeah.
They wanna take care of the people they have.
Yeah.
Let me just ask a question, because I think you have told us at least one suggestion, and you probably told us more than that, but I'm recalling the bathroom you talked about. Bathroom is a difficult challenge in the downtown area. As you know, you may remember Forgotten Ministries tried to do that. It wasn't well received, and I think they backed off, which we appreciate. But I do understand what happens when somebody doesn't have a public restroom to go to downtown. So that's a hard problem too. If we can find a place, I can't say if that's possible with the city, but finding the place is going to be challenging. But it's not insurmountable. The shelter, that's one of the things I was really, I was focusing on when I thought about, when Jeremiah came, his shelter's not open all the time. I get that. I don't know if it's open right now or not.
it is open.
Okay. But it's not open all the time, and I understand why, because it takes a lot of money. It takes more than that. It takes people, and he's running it off, my understanding, a lot of volunteers. David Brittle told us that his shelter is not very big either, and it's full all the time. I can't remember. I think he was talking about adding some other housing.
Some family housing.
Some family housing, because he didn't have enough. If we could figure out with a group effort where the housing would go and figure out how to get past. I know Cynthia talked about low barrier. That's where we are kind of our effort to work together kind of broke down, in my opinion, because the differing philosophies, and which I'm respectful of. But what it leaves us with is Forgotten Ministries has a shelter that opens some of the time, and I know why it's not all the time. Salvation Armies is too small, but they take, it's my understanding they take everybody, but they've got to have the rules that if people get out of control or something, that's a deal where I can't speak for them anymore, I can't for you, but that's what I'm hearing and perceiving, and I think that's what the commissioners are hearing as we're trying to figure out what can the city do, if anything. Well, we've got to be able to do something, because in this day and age, the city's expected to solve a lot of problems. This one's a very, very hard one. So that's what I was talking about with the shelter. And then there's the problem that the mayor mentioned is, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful of anybody, but if we offer more, we don't, I think, I'll speak for what I think is the city's position. We want to do something that makes it better, measurable by some people have positive outcomes, and they get the treatment they need, they get their prescriptions, and they get back to what I'm going to call some degree of normalcy, where they can get a job, be a functioning person again. I feel like from what you're telling me, you said the 90 chronic folks, I think those folks are going to be hard to reach, and I'm not sure that's going to be a group that we should target. It might be, if there's 90 chronic ones, about 150 and 60 of them can be helped. And I'm just talking out loud, because I'm buying some time for the commissioners if they want to say this, and if they don't, that's fine too. We all appreciate what you're doing. The point is to come in today. We appreciate what you're doing. If we can figure out how to work together, we might be able to, and what outcomes we can all agree that we're trying to achieve, then I bet we can pull together and see what can happen.
They're just valid questions worth looking at. I've read so many articles of West Coast cities that are throwing money at it and seeing their numbers go up. And so I think that's what the mayor's talking about too. You know, you can try to throw money at the problem and not fix it.
We understand.
So would y'all be willing, say, to partner with the Salvation Army? I mean, they're wanting to build facility. I'm seeing you shake your head no. I mean, that's what I'm getting to.
They are
We've got this
faith-based.
group and that group and this group and,
Well, they are faith-based and we are not. So
Okay.
they drug test, they require them to do a lot of things that we do not require. So it would be hard to partner with them. I mean, we work together now, so, I mean, I call David all the time.
why is that a problem that they drug test? I mean, and what am I missing here, right?
It's a barrier.
Yeah, it's a barrier that they can't stay at the shelter. So a lot of those 90 chronic cannot stay at Salvation Army.
We still do. So if you test positive for marijuana, even though you have a card, you cannot stay at their shelter. I think they do make, they have some times when if it's under 30 degrees, it's freezing, they will lower that barrier and let them in. But the other times when it's not, even if you have a medical marijuana card, you cannot stay there. That's their rules, and I understand it. But it's a barrier to the people that use marijuana for mental health or PTSD or whatever, a disability or whatever. They can't stay there.
Would a shelter facility that was a drug treatment facility that would take anybody with a drug problem in with whatever, they're going to have rules because that's, if you don't do that, I don't think, from my understanding, you won't be able to be successful, but would that be, is that more what we're looking for? I don't remember, I can't speak for Salvation Army, probably nobody can in here. What I'm kind of recalling from David Brittle, and I don't know what his rules are, but I thought he said they take everybody unless they become a safety risk. Now, I don't know, I don't remember him getting into drug testing or not. I'm not saying that, if people have a drug problem, and I don't know if you can force, I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah,
You can't force people.
You can't force them
unless
to
somehow
get
you get a-
rehab, so.
Unless they do it voluntarily or there's a court order, and I'm not suggesting that we should, but I don't know how we solve the problem if we don't make people do it.
One of the things that has been helpful is the Urgent Recovery Center.
Where's that at, Janet?
That's at Northwest Center for Behavioral Health.
Oh, okay.
Where the-
Is that out on the campus of NOC, or where's it?
No, that's at Northwest Center for Behavioral Health on Grand.
702 North Grand,
Oh, you're familiar with it.
Northwest Behavioral Health, yes.
How long's the program?
I don't know about the program.
Okay, I'm just
but
kidding.
We frequent
Basically,
that.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
basically, they can keep them for 23 and a half hours to observe them.
Oh.
And so if somebody has a mental health crisis on the street, I think it's beneficial to the police, I hope, because their only recourse in the past has been take them to the hospital and drop them off at the emergency room or take them to jail. The Urgent Recovery Center gives them another option. For some people, if they're in a mental health crisis, if they can get in and get a bed, sleep a little bit, get a good meal, talk to a counselor, get started back on their medicine, they're started on the right track.
I understand now that, I think what I've heard the police call, that's an emergency order of detention or something. Take them somewhere for that period of time that can be done. They're evaluated, ultimately they're going to be released. So it comes down to the person's going to have to want to change or solve their problem. I know how tough addiction can be because I have alcoholics in my family that are hardcore alcoholics that have been to treatment for long periods of time and still relapse. So anyway, I appreciate what you do. It's a hard problem. I don't think it can be solved. We can only figure out how to work together and maybe make it better after we figure out how we measure what better is.
Okay. Well, we thank you for letting us talk.
I have another comment. You made a comment about a bathroom downtown. Why is that such an insurmountable issue?
Well, Commissioner, I'm glad you asked. I'm not sure it's insurmountable, but I do know Forgotten Ministries, a few years ago, had proposed one, and it was not well received by businesses and a nonprofit in the area because their perception is that it would have, from their perspective, homelessness and folks downtown rummaging through dumpsters, leaving trash around, defecating all over the place is a problem, and they were concerned that it would bring more to the area. And so we worked a long time directly with Forgotten Ministries on that and some of the downtown areas. There was also potentially some questions about the overlay, the downtown overlay, whether we could do it. I think at the time we believed we could, but in any event, we could look at that, but the problem is the location. If we could find a location, for instance, I would suggest where the Salvation Army is already, or maybe, I don't know who owns the houses across the street, but if you put it somewhere, where do you think it would go? Maybe I'll just see what you guys think, and maybe it isn't a problem.
Well, they stay downtown because that's a mile within all their resources. They get
Right.
fed down there, they get picked up for the bus to the shelter, or they can go to Salvation Army because it's down there. So it needs to be somewhere downtown. I mean, close at
Yeah.
least, because all my
Salvation
calls
Army's
are from
The
downtown
downtown
businesses.
area, from my perspective. So it could be done if there's the political will to do it, and we could find a
And
solution
even a
that.
porta potty and a washing station would be better than nothing.
I'll remind you, though, we just had to pass an ordinance to close our bathrooms in the parks because they were being vandalized.
Well, that's a different issue.
You know, I mean,
And they may be interlinked.
Do you get calls from homeless at the parks, or how often?
How often do I get a call about
Yeah, well,
a
yes, are
homeless
they at
person?
the park?
Several times a week.
Okay.
The city, various city entities reach out to SOS from time to maybe others too, because the solution is not just take them to jail.
Sure.
In fact, we're not taking people to jail right now for that type of municipal offense. So it could be, if that's where we want to think about, we might want to.
And maybe think about where they could stay. The ones that pop up at 10 at the library, and you guys have me go move them.
Yes.
Where could they go?
That's the hard problem that the city is struggling to solve. We don't know, or I don't know. I just know they can't be there, and they can't be in a tent, or they couldn't be in a tent behind Forgotten Ministries, because that's not palatable, for lack of a better word. It's not normal behavior. And so I don't know the answer, but that's the problem that we have. And the chief and I go visit about it a lot, and for his officers, because they're the ones, and they want to be, if there's a problem, or whether they're homeless or not homeless, and they're caused a problem, call the police. But they're limited on what they can do too. We've heard about the emergency order of detention, but if it doesn't rise to that level, all they can do is tell them to move along.
I mean,
They'll move along somewhere else.
If they can't go to Salvation Army, and they could possibly be trespassed from Mercy House. That happens too. Where do you expect them to go?
It's a hard problem.
I mean, I got called this morning that there was a gentleman sleeping on the sidewalk downtown, but he had nowhere else to go. So he's not comfortable at a shelter because of his past, so he sleeps outside, and that's where he ended up at.
That is the hard problem that we're hopeful that if we get all the organizations, or at least some of them like we're doing now, maybe if we get them together, we could figure out a better answer than we have now.
and I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that that business owner also has rights. You know, they pay a lot of money to have that spot that they rent and try to get people to come to their location. So, I mean, they have rights also.
And I understand that, but if I had some place to tell them that would be a safe place for them to go to sleep, I mean, some won't sleep at night, they stay up all night because they're scared, and they'll try to nap during the day. Where do you want me to direct them?
Difficult problem.
It is. It is. We're open to solutions.
Well,
But, I mean, we all get the problem. We're trying to figure out the solutions. So,
Leroy, did you have a comment you wanted to
I
add?
was just going to say, in other towns I've worked, vandalism on public restrooms is a real challenge, just keeping them open.
Well, clearly, any public bathrooms at any point in the future would have to be monitored, because that's exactly what would happen. Because I don't think future results are going to be different. And that's probably possible. I'm sure the city would look to groups to help us with that if this comes to, that's why it has to be a partnership. The city's not going to be able to solve this by ourselves.
Because I know if you do like porta potties, they can't really move into those like they can a public bathroom, which I know they've done, so.
Yeah, but it's not a good look to have porta potties downtown.
Keep in mind, we did try porta potties downtown.
I know, yeah.
They wouldn't use the porta potties. They went to the area around the porta potties and defecated outside of the porta potty, and eventually were removed because it was creating such a nuisance. So that's been tried. It wasn't a great solution, and now we're back to square one. I agree with the council and city manager. It's hard to find a resolution to this issue we're having. We've tried different things, you know, opening the breezeway and put tables in there, and a lot of bad things happened in there. So, of course, we're not taking people to jail anymore for minor ordinances, which Mayor alluded that when I came on, there were 4 true homeless people, and we knew all 4 of them. We knew when the weather was getting bad, they would call us, we'd pick them up, we'd take them to jail, they'd get their hot food, a good night's sleep, and serve their time, and they'd be back on the street. And the next time the weather got bad, we'd get another phone call. So we all realize that there's a problem, and we all want to solve it, but I agree with the mayor. It seems like we're coming at it from 15 different angles, and there's no central organization that's leading the charge on what we can do as a city to solve the problem.
My concern with having a designated area for them to go to would create a tent city, and I don't think anyone wants to create that either, because then I'm sure that would just open up other problems.
I think we've seen that in other cities where they did a designated area, and that designated area is growing and growing and growing and growing, and it's not solving the problem.
Well, Mayor and Commissioners, what I would like to do is reach out to Hope Outreach, and I'm confident they'll want to come in at some point, maybe in the next couple of meetings. And if there's any other organization, I think it'd be good to hear from. And then we might want to take a stab again at maybe working with all these 4 or 5 groups or however many people to talk about these ideas, because we are not, even though it feels like we might be, I'm not trying to be confrontational. We're just, we have the same goal or the same desire to improve the problem. We just need to figure out what our standard of measuring that's going to be, figure out what we can agree on to move forward. Because with a shelter, again, it just, the low barrier shelter, if you're really going to be effective treating them, I don't know how you do that. But again, you brought up some thought-provoking ideas, and so I think that's part of bringing the different perspectives in here that are trying to serve and make the same problem better.
Well, one of the things, the benefits of having a shelter is that they would have a place to sleep, so they wouldn't have to worry about that every night. They would have better hygiene, so they'd be taking better care of themselves. They could wash their clothes. So that's 3 of the things that's holding most of them back. So just think about that.
Yeah, Ron is right. You can't have one without the other. We want to get people off the
Yeah,
streets too.
and I understand that, but what's the end result? Is that a cost that we're going to pay for forever? Or what I'm asking is, how do we move them out of that situation back into society where they go to work every day, they rent an apartment or a house or buy a house?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
is this just a cost that's going to cost us millions of dollars every year?
I think
Over and over and
the
over?
problem is this is a case-by-case situation.
Right.
There's not one solution for everybody.
And all the solutions are intertwined so much that if you don't have a place to stay and a place to bathe and get groomed, you can't get a job. You can't get a job if you don't have
No, I agree.
transportation.
I understand that.
So it's all just such a difficult,
Yeah.
challenging problem. And
Yeah.
And you have to come at it from 15 different ways because there's not one solution.
Well, I think I can probably speak for everyone.
I have one other
Yes, sir.
comment to make. How much are we spending now on this problem?
Well, that's a good question. It depends on what we say is going for homeless stuff. Just off the top of my head, I can't think of much outside of CB2 funds, a lot of which have been approved because to some degree they've been,
I don't want the specifics. My point is not much.
not much, yes, sir.
Okay. Personally, I feel like we could give more. I don't know what that number is, and I don't know where we spend it on. But I think we need to try. I think if we walk away from this meeting with what's happened right now, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to do anything to improve the lives of any of these folks. Now, you can argue with me about whether or not that's our job, and that's fair. But personally, I think that we probably ought to commit more resources to this and give it a try at some level of some way. Right now, all we're doing is listening.
And I do think we have another group that's going to come in
I
shortly.
understand.
And Rob, I would be more than willing to put all 5 of those groups in one room and say, what can we do as a group? I don't want 5 different things. How can we take everyone's abilities and resources and make something happen? I'm not opposed to that at all.
I think that's a good start.
It just seems like this bunch is doing that, and this one's doing that, and at the end of the day, nothing really positive happens as far as measurable. You know, and when I say nothing's happening, thank you for what you do. That's not what I'm saying.
I know.
I'm talking about how do we measure this, that we helped this person today, that made this move, then eventually moved them back into society.
And please know,
Man,
sir,
I'm all
that has
for that.
happened. That has happened. We have been successful with people getting them off the streets into jobs and into housing. That has absolutely happened.
And how's that measured? How many?
A handful.
Just a handful.
Unfortunately, a handful.
No,
But it's,
and I
but it's
believe
a start.
that.
It has happened. It's
That
not-
handful is what keeps y'all going.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So let's listen to Hope Outreach. I think they're supposed to be coming. And I promise you, we'll put a meeting together. I will get everybody in a room. You know, we all understand the problem. It's the solution we can't seem to find. So,
Because we'd have 155 if it wasn't for the handful that you had. We'd
Right.
have another 165, 175 for the 12 that Jeremiah's gotten back in to society. Not counting how many that Salvation Army's done over the years that they've been in here. So our homeless population should have been up around over 300 more than likely. But based on what you guys done, your collective, Jeremiah's collective, Salvation Army's collective, we're maintaining that number.
It's worth doing, sir.
And thank you guys for doing what you did.
yeah, thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
We do appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Item 3.2, present the 2022-2023 Independent Auditor's Report on the financial statement of the City of Enid and its related authorities.
Joel Hauser is going to come up here and introduce himself. He's our auditor, our partner in charge of Forvis. He's going to talk to you about his report, answer any questions you have, and then we also might, I think we're going to point out some highlights of the audit after that. You should have an electronic copy, and you're getting a hard copy right now.
Is there going to be a test?
No test. No test at all. It'll be an easy presentation. But yeah, thank you. I'm Joel Hauser. I'm a partner with Forvis, and we completed the audit. It's due by 12/31 to the state auditor's office, and we're able to meet all of those deadlines. The great news is it's a clean audit opinion. We have no findings, anything like that to report like we would be required to do. So all that information is in the 150-page report. we won't go into, I won't go into any great detail. I usually tell everybody there's a management discussion and analysis section at the very front of the report, which really goes through a high-level summary of just what happened at the city financially. So I encourage everybody to read that at your leisure. You can read more if you want to. But yeah, great news is no findings, nothing really to report. We also completed the single audit. The single audit is an audit of the federal funds that the city received, which they received about $6 million this past year, say expenditure-wise. Two main programs, the airport improvement program spent about $2 million, and then the large CDBG program, which is really COVID relief funding that the city spent about $2 million. So we audit those two programs, required to report any findings to the federal government. We don't have any findings. Everything was nice and put together. Really good news is the city has been what is called a high-risk auditee as part of the single audit process. Basically, there's a bunch of criteria the federal government puts into place. If you meet all those criteria and don't have issues, which are findings, late audits, all those filings, then you actually become a low-risk auditee, and the city will be eligible to be a low-risk auditee next year for passing all the single audits. And so that's good news. It just means we have to audit less programs, kind of less oversight from your federal agencies. And so that's what we hope happens, and that's what should happen. So other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I know we're going to go through some financial information. It's a lot of information, and so I really have a hard time presenting what it is that's important to you guys.
Joel,
but-
would you go ahead and explain, there's a separate requirement now for
Yes.
this letter to the governing body and management?
Absolutely.
Kind of tell them what all this 20-some pages talks about.
Sure. So there's also a report separate, which is called our management letter, and that takes you to just, it's a high-level summary of what an audit actually is, what we're looking for. And so as you go through it, the main thing to kind of point out is it outlines responsibilities of the city, responsibilities of the auditor. In short, what it is we audit the numbers. We don't necessarily put together the numbers. That's the city finance department. We audit those numbers and we follow materiality guidelines. So it's reasonable assurance is what it's called, which is not absolute assurance. So we don't go through every number, making sure everything is right. We set materiality thresholds. If we find an error over that materiality threshold, that's kind of what gets into the finding situations. And so we don't have any of those. It'll walk you through the responsibilities of the city, putting everything together. It also talks about adjustments that come into play. So anytime you're doing an audit, especially of this size, typically what the city council gets and everybody gets to see on a monthly basis is just a snapshot of a smaller portion of financial statements, usually budgetary basis type things. So like your general fund, you'll see an outline and expenditure detail of what happened during that month. What the audit does is it puts together a snapshot as of fiscal year end, but it's on a much larger basis, GAAP basis. So lots of accruals in there. That's where the police and fire pensions, the city's pension costs come into play. All that information is in here as part of the city's cost. And so that letter will walk you through some of those big significant areas to look at in those financial statements.
So I was reading through this yesterday or day before, and there are some swings.
Yes.
Right, huge swings in this. Is that basically because of Call Lake? I mean, when we're moving funds?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now, the city has a major construction project going on, and the way it works, this is typical of a city government, there's multiple ways to do it, but the city has chosen there's a break between governmental funds, which are typically funded by taxes or fees associated with that, and then there are business type activity funds, which is what your utilities are, where you're billing people, getting money in, really operating like a business. So typically what happens is when the city has a sales tax to collect that money for those projects, that project ultimately is going to get moved to a business type activity. So you're going to see money coming in a governmental fund for taxes collected, and then it's going to get transferred over to the utility fund because legally those are separate entities. And so you're going to see these wide swings
Yeah,
for a
okay.
while until construction's completed and everything just goes over there at one point in time.
Okay.
Speaking of those funds, we got dinged back when we first started with the Call Lake and everything else because the previous auditor told us to do it a certain way, and our city finance officer did it that way. And then she was like put out there, and I was like, well, you told her to do this, and then you're gonna come back and ding us. Is everything being done properly now by the way it should be done and
Yes.
everything else?
Yes.
And you have not told her to change anything? And
No.
okay,
It's very difficult when it comes, because there are multiple ways to present that. And differing opinions, even within the accounting world, we have lots of discussions of that, but yes.
well, that
it
was
is-
the thing,
yes,
was
it is.
she was told to do it a certain way, and then all of a sudden he comes back a year later and dings her for it. I said, you haven't told her to change anyways or to do anything, and come back next year and ding her on it for next year.
Yeah, no, that is not happening. Everything is the way it's supposed to be as far as how everything's put together, yeah. It's coming into a governmental fund, and then it gets transferred over. It does get a little difficult when you get into the accounting pieces of it, but overall, yes, it's correct.
Okay, because I don't want to say ding next year for doing something that you asked us to do.
Yeah, no, those are not fun conversations. I'm not going to say it has not happened before, but.
Oh, it's happened.
Not here, yeah,
It's happened,
yeah.
so.
But no, I don't foresee that happening, and if it did, we would be here to tell you that that's what's going on.
And take responsibility for it.
Yeah, we would have some responsibility for always in those situations.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Comments, concerns?
No, as the city manager, I'm very pleased with the audit. I think you hit the highlights. I would like to, Jennifer, I know you'll love me for this, but I feel like there's some good news in here we need to talk about. But before you go up, Joel, there's 3 reports in here that is your responsibility.
Yes.
And if you guys dig into this letter, you'll see like the last 22 pages is the management representation letter that we have to sign, acknowledging that at the end of the day, everything is management responsibility. And so we've done that, but what your role is, you come in, the financial statements, you said we put them together. You're right, we put together the trial balance and all those elements.
Right.
And the accuracy of those is up to us. You test that, so you give a report on that. And you said it was the clean opinion, the best. There's 2 other opinions you give us, one on internal control and the single audit. I mean, you might have talked about don't you do the one on the internal control stuff?
Yeah, there are 2. So when I said there's no findings, under governmental auditing standards, because everything is public information, if we have a finding, it shows up in the financial statements. And so there's a letter that talks about the opinion on just the financial statements, which is clean. Then you'll see 2 opinions in the back. One of those is whether or not we had any findings in the financial statement piece of it. And then there's another letter that talks about if we had any findings in the single audit for the federal funding.
Yeah, it's at the very end if you guys want to look at it. Page 101 to towards the end, there's a couple back-to-back that you're referring to.
Right, right. And then the very last 2 pages, that's where if there were findings, that's where they would be presented. Yeah.
So, and you are the independent auditor.
Yes.
That we hire. Council approved, I think you're in your 2nd year here.
Correct.
And so
Correct.
that's their job. So if at any time, in the end, you're charged with, you stand up there and say what, from your perspective, words. That's what your opinion
Yes.
means, which in itself is kind of confusing. You call it
It is.
clean, and that's the only kind you can, I mean, it's not the only kind you can get, but it's the only kind you want to get.
It's the only kind you want to get, and it is, it used to be called unqualified, which was really confusing. Now they just call it unmodified. As the terms finally got into that.
Well, I want to make sure that the commission knows at any time, if we haven't given them your number, they can call you anytime
Oh,
they want.
absolutely.
Maybe it's on here somewhere.
Yeah.
And you can talk directly to them. There's no prohibition. You are the city's auditor.
Correct.
But having said that, I think I would like to hear some of the good news about the numbers that you have said are accurate, or free of material misstatement, all that language accountants use. So Jennifer, why don't you come on up and then if there's any questions for us or you, I think we're done with that.
If I can help.
I asked him to stay
clarify.
close. Aaron is out, so I'll be giving these few slides. This is new. Okay. And just as Joel said, we'll be looking at about the first 12 pages, and that is called the Management Discussion and Analysis section, also called the MD&A. And we'll just have a few financial highlights on these slides that Aaron put together.
Jennifer, it
And,
just occurs to me, I don't know if we got these slides sent out to the commission or not,
okay,
but if we didn't, let's send them so that they could look at them in their leisure. Because you don't have to hit every number, but just like revenue. And you can tell the left-hand column is the year that's audited, right?
right, the very
So I
far
can tell
left.
it's higher than it's ever been in the last 5 years. It tells me we have more revenue.
Yes,
Now, we spent more, but you can see that. So if you'll just kind of move through it,
okay.
unless they want to know more detail.
So that is 5 years, but you can see everything looks pretty good. Revenue going up, obviously expenses go up with that. And the next slide has a little more breakdown. This is our statement of activities, which is on page 8 of the audit. And the revenues increased by 12 million since last year. Expenses increased by 5.6 million. She goes over and lists a few of those things on this slide. And a lot of that was our grants, as he said before, that we received on the grant contributions. And in airport, we received that. So the other items for the revenue increases are just from utility operations, sales, if you go play a round of golf. Those are all in the charges for services. And then, of course, the grant line is pretty explanatory there. The general revenues is where your taxes fall into. So taxes as a whole and any interest that we've received, which because we're holding funds for the cost sales tax, our interest has been higher, but those are specified for CAW. So it's not like we can spend them on anything specific other than the CAW. And then she goes over a few things that are expensive and has increased, so. And this is where we're talking about our statement of net position. There's 5 categories that's discussed. All 4 have increased except the deferred inflows. And the next slide talks more about those items, just comparing the last year with FY23.
Just looking at total assets at the top, that's nearly,
So
That's $750
the assets
million,
increased by
right?
114.7. Liabilities also increased by 109 million, but the majority of those are definitely due to CAW. You have your program going on, the project, and they call it construction in progress or work in progress, and then you have your liabilities that obviously increase.
So
when
what's
you have
considered
loans.
an asset with a city? Is it just cash, or is it real estate? Is it property?
Everything.
Everything,
Most of
okay.
it. Most of it's your buildings and equipment.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But one piece, which is the CAW part, it's not an actual fixed asset yet. Part of it is, but the other part is what we call construction in progress. So any projects that are still in process, you guys have not approved them as a completed project. Engineering hasn't approved them as a completed project. We have them in what is called construction in progress. But that is considered also another type of asset.
Okay.
and those assets are depreciated according to our
Yes.
policies, and then when you remove, you get the net assets, so. But that jumped out at me, big jump because of Call Lake, but what jumped out at me, that's $750 million that we're saying the city's worth. Now, all those aren't, that's not necessarily fair market value, it's historical cost or net realizable value, or whatever the standard says it has to be, but that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That the city is worth, if you want to say that, manages, you know.
So the total increase in net position was 22.8 million from FY '22.
Before you leave there, I just so that I'm clear about the call, the total assets, which is the fourth line down, that does or does not include the call aid?
It does.
It does.
Of what we have completed so far.
Okay.
And then that's also why
What
you
we've
see
paid for so far.
the liabilities are also much higher because those are the things that has to do with the loans.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say probably about 100 million, 106 million of this year's increase in the assets is related to the call lake directly.
We'll likely have another probably big increase this time next year when the next audit comes out, because remember, this goes back to what was on the books or accounted for June 30th, about 6.5 months ago now,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I think last time I remember looking, there's about 150 million of commitments still outstanding on. And those numbers don't show up necessarily in these, that's just what's left of spending.
This looks at the assets and it tells which categories have increased and which have decreased. So the total increases was about 144 million. The decreases were about almost 30 million. So that's where you come into the net increase on assets was 114.7. And these are the categories for each. We have a slide also for liabilities next. And the pages at the bottom are the pages in the audit. And so this talks about the liability. So all the increases total about 109 million, and the decreases was just under $500,000. So this is our historic net position, which is what we talked about the last 3 or 4 slides. And it relates to all authorities and our overall net position.
So in a healthy, growing community, the trend that I see is that, for the most part, the long-term trend is up. So that's some measure of the health of the community or the city's finances there alone, so.
So the large increases over the past 5 years are related to the call lake program, though.
So our debt's going up too. We'll probably see that here in a minute.
Yeah, the net position numbers, just so you know, it's your assets minus
Yeah,
your
you're
liabilities.
right.
It's just think of it as your net worth as an individual. What you own versus what you owe is really what your bottom line is.
And that's all she had was the major numbers. So there is the email for Joel also on the last one, and we'll get those emailed to you.
Hey, Joel, just going back to almost that very first slide where it talked about total assets versus total liabilities, and that spread right there, I mean, just roughly, it looked like liability was about 51, 52%, maybe something like that of what assets were. What number do we look for right there? I mean, what's the healthy city that?
That's a good question, and it varies depending on the projects. I would say from just what I have seen, you have a very healthy unrestricted net position line item. That's probably the biggest number I would look at, looking at this slide, that $62,150,000. There's a lot of cities where that's a deficit, that's negative. So, yeah, I would say the state has state laws of how much you can get in liability position. I mean, you're nowhere near what the state law is. A lot of that's around just general obligation debt, which you really don't have a lot of. Most of yours is tied into an asset. And so you're at a pretty healthy fund balance level, net position level.
Okay.
Because one of the big numbers that moves that unrestricted piece and can get people in the negatives are the pensions. Are the pensions.
Okay.
So the pension liabilities are calculated using actuary numbers, and it's police, fire, city-defined pension, and I believe there may be one more, an older pension plan.
Okay.
Those get valued every year. There are very few assets on the books, especially when it's the police and fire pensions. And so depending on how the investments do during the year, that could decrease or that could significantly increase. And so we really gauge that unrestricted line item because even with your pension situation, and a lot of that's handled at the state level, not at the city level, that can kick that into a negative, but you're at a positive.
All right. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Commissioner? All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is an action item later on in
Yes,
this.
if you're comfortable, it's in consent.
Through this.
And if you're not, there's nothing. We're going to send this to whoever has to have it, the clearinghouse and the state.
Okay. Item 3.3, discuss the public safety sales tax report. And I think Chief Courier's going to do this.
Good evening. I'm going to start. I'll try to move quickly, but out of time. I'm sure Scott wants to make sure and get up here and speak too. So
Good news, Chief.
Yes, sir.
We will continue this in the regular meeting if we don't get through it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. This is going to be our annual report for our fiscal year 24 public safety sales tax. This is a 1/4-cent sales tax that is split evenly between police and fire. So each of that 8-cent tax collection collected roughly $1.2 million for each of police and fire departments, of which 30%, approximately $374,000, is dedicated specifically for capital items. And the remaining $826,000 of that tax collection goes to the operations portion of the budget. So this report is to detail and explain what we spent our 30% of that tax money on for the capital purchases, and to give you a kind of a status report of where we are on those projects. First project to talk about is the 9/11 communications upgrade to our notification system. That is by far a very outdated system we have a lot of problems with for several years now. That's a system that sends the tones and turns on the lights at our fire stations to let our crews know when they have a call. Every day we have new issues with it. We can't buy parts to fix it. We're just putting Band-Aids on it every day. I have all the equipment purchased. It's just waiting for install. The old equipment operated off of line of sight radios to towers. The technologies have changed, so now it's going to operate off of IP address. We're going to put fiber in all of our fire stations for that to operate on. We're just waiting on one more fire station to be connected to fiber, and then we'll be installing the equipment. So as soon as Dobson plugs in that last fire station, within 2 weeks, I can have the equipment in, and that project will be done, and we'll be operating a lot more efficiently. That is at a cost of about $123,000. The next project was to buy a 14-foot enclosed trailer for our technical rescue team's equipment. To this point, we've been carrying all of our rescue equipment on our heavy rescue truck, which we have purchased one. It takes 3 years to get one. So we're still operating with the old truck that has structural damage to the box because it's so overweighted with all of our equipment. So what we did was we bought this trailer to put a lot of our supplemental equipment in. So the heavy rescue truck that you see rolling down the road, it will have what we consider to be like the first hour response equipment in it. So it'll roll out and get on scene and get started. And if operations are bigger or more prolonged than that first hour, we can pull that trailer out there with all the supplemental equipment in it at a lower cost and a lot more, take a lot of the stress off of our vehicles that are driving down the road on a daily basis. And that was at a cost of about $11,000. My guys are doing all the work. They're building shelving and storage units in that trailer. Several of these projects that we're working on, the cost estimate and the money coming from the capital budget is buying the equipment, the truck, the trailer, things like that. But my guys are really chipping in and providing all the labor. And I'll make sure and kind of explain some of that as we go. The next project was to buy a new command vehicle. That is the pickup you see rolling out of Station 1 behind all the fire trucks. That is our incident commander. Our deputy chief drives that. We pulled that vehicle, replaced it a little bit early because we have a need for reliable pool cars. When we send people to class out of town, there's usually 3 or 4 people with their luggage and, all their structural gear because they go to hands-on training in other towns. So that pickup with a bed cover on it, they can travel safely and keep their equipment dry. So the old command will be used as a pool vehicle, and that new command vehicle went online today, as a matter of fact. And that was at a cost of about $60,000. We're in the process right now of doing a remodel to the bathrooms at Fire Station 1. We house a lot of people down there. Right now we have 3 showers, but one of them is a private shower room. The other 2 showers are very, let's say 1970s locker room style showers. The guys call them peekaboo showers because when you're standing there in the shower, you can look across 3 feet away and see the other guy in the other shower. So they're not private. So we want to enclose that and make that a second private shower area. And then another portion of right just off that main bathroom, we're going to build another additional, a third enclosed private shower area for on average 10 to 12 personnel that work out of that station. So that way it encourages them and gives them a better opportunity to go and decon every time they come back from a fire call or somewhere where they medical call where they get an exposure, things like that, and keep them healthier and safer. That project is at a cost of about $50,000. The next project is improving the drainage ditch at Fire Station 3. The north side of the property against Randolph has always had a very steep ditch. When they go out and mow and try to weed eat that area, we've had several injuries over the years, and I mean decades. The stations have been there since, I believe, 1984. I worked out there for 17 years and saw 2 light riding lawnmowers roll over trying to mow that ditch. And even when we're not damaging mowers, just the steepness of the ditch is hard on the steering components of the lawnmower. So for about $50,000, we're looking at, or $15,000, we're looking at ways to improve the slope of that drainage ditch. Still allow good drainage, but be easier for us to maintain and keep that yard looking nice. One of the other projects that we recently undertook was with the help of our city manager, we were able to acquire a city-owned building on East Park. Some improvements were made to that, and we now are using that as an indoor training facility and storage area. It's a 30 by 90 building. There's been had a new roof put on it. The garage doors have been, overhead doors have been fixed. We put a heater in it to keep things from freezing in there. And in that 30 by 90 building, we're going to store the technical rescue trailer that I just detailed, engine 51 that we use in the parades and use for funerals, to get those out of my mechanic shop so they can actually work on the fire trucks that we're trying to run down the road every day. But also inside of that, we have some training props, including, and this is another place where my guys chipped in, they're doing all the labor. The department bought the materials, but they have built a 30 by 14 mock apartment inside that building. So it's a wood structure. You go into, I mean, they're construction guys. They built it. You could live in the thing. But it is a apartment size structure inside the building where we can do search and rescue drills. We can blackout mask and do rescue on the second story of it off the roof of the prop. They're going to be able to do rope rescue. So the high angle rope rescue stuff. Be able to do it indoors, and while they're doing that training, if they get a call, they can just lock the door and go on a call instead of having to, right now, Autry is a great resource sometimes, but if they're training out there, they get a call, they got to pick up all the gear, they can't just leave it. So that indoor facility is going to be a great use to us. So anticipated needs for the next fiscal year, like I said, it's pretty, on a 10-year average, probably about a 2.4% annual increase to that safety tax. So that $374,000 that we use for capital purchases this year will be, closer to $390 next year. We try to stay close to that as much as we can. Supplemental funds have to come from the city. But when you're buying fire trucks and things like that, it's hard to run on that kind of a budget. So this next fiscal year, we're going to be looking for a little bit of help. Our highest priority, I know I've talked about Ladder 1 a lot, the 100-foot platform truck, but that is not our biggest concern at this time. Right now, Engine 5, which is out on Garland, it is the 75-foot stick. It's our other ladder truck. It doesn't have a bucket on it. It's just a stick ladder. That needs to be replaced before anything else. It's got structural damage. The frame is rusted, and we're starting to have some serious issues with that truck. So that'll be my top priority for my next budget, part of the capital budget, and that will come in at about $1.8 million. The upside is, it takes, well, kinda, it's gonna take 3 years to get that built and delivered. So you don't pay for it until you get it. So that bill won't come in for 3 years, but it's still a hefty price tag. After that, it's cordless extrication equipment for our new rescue truck that comes in about $75,000. Everything's battery operated now, even heavy rescue tools like that. Next on the list will be radio replacements, replacing all of our handhelds and radios in our trucks. That price tag's about $60,000. We need a new breathing air compressor that fills our SCBA bottles that we wear on our backs. That's about $80,000. And then if there's extra money, we could probably replace another pool car because our small fleet is very aged. So that's what I'll be looking for in the next fiscal year. Have any questions? No? Okay.
Good job. Thank you.
Tough act to follow. Like Chief Curry was saying, our budget from last year was about $1.25 million. Last year, we designated about everything we had to a new record software that we're scheduled to go live in April. Me and our IT department has spent a lot of hours configuring that and getting that going. That was $950,000. It's going to be the more we figure out what it does, the more impressed I am with it, and the more that we actually learn that it'll do that we didn't ever think it would. So that's going to be a plus. The 23-24 budget, as we get going, we've budgeted for the new training center that we've been planning for a couple of years. We're going into phase 2, which is a defensive tactics center. We've budgeted $1 million is what we've asked for. That will actually go out to bids hopefully in the next month or so. So hopefully we're looking at it being right in that area. We've worked hard with the architect and everybody to keep it right as close to that as we can. Eventually, we'd like to be able to open that up to actually let civilians and other people utilize that. Right now, we wouldn't be able to because we don't. We're also doing our police academies, and we don't have anyone to actually maintain and control that part of it. So eventually, we would even look into getting a civilian coordinator to actually coordinate letting outside agencies or outside civilian organizations and stuff utilize that also. So that's something that we'd look for in the future. We budgeted $45,000 for a new truck or a van. We've actually this week actually have found one that we are brought over the request to purchase today, which will be right under that $45,000. Everything else that we had found was well over that price. So we're looking at getting that hopefully in the next week or two. We budgeted $120,000 for a new server, which our server we had over there was over 10 years old. That came in right at $120,000. So we was good there. Every year we replace 8 to 10 new computers. We replaced $10,000 worth of computers that are used almost 24 hours a day. So we try to keep those updated. So that's another $10,000 we used. We budgeted for 6 police units. Well, we run into a difficulty there, especially with the union strike they had. They made a limited number of 2024 police units, and they're all accounted for. So we were unable to get any 2024. We're reaching out now to agencies or car dealerships to see if they'd be able to come up with any of the 2024. We may end up having to wait and bid for 2025. But that's something that we're researching right now, trying to figure out if we could get our 6 units that we budgeted. We usually budget for 10 to 12 cars a year, and I always get asked, well, why do you need so many cars every year? Well, we have 80 officers that drive cars all the time. So if you replace 10 every year, you have to drive that car for 8 years before the option, and we're driving those 40 hours a week, so we're putting quite a few miles on it. A lot of people don't understand how much we do drive them, and so that's why we are trying to keep our equipment up to date, because that is our offices. I mean, our guys out there in those cars, and that's their offices. So that's why we do ask, we try to get new cars every year to replace the older ones. We still got some that are 10 years old that our guys are still driving, 2014s. When I was over the fleet, I bought the first Ford Explorers, and that was in 2014, and we're still driving some of those. So we still got some of those that's 10 years old that we're trying to replace. So that's why we got those. Flooring, over in the police department, we have tile flooring in our hallways and everything. Well, it keeps, our floors keep adjusting and cracking, so 2 or 3 times a year we'll have spots in our floors where our tile's breaking up. So we've taken some quotes. We budgeted for $46,000 on that, and we've taken some quotes. Most of them at first was quite a bit over that for tile. Tile's not been working in the past, so we're looking at other options. Right now we're looking at maybe stained concrete. So I'm going to put that out we put it out for bids once, and everything come in too high. So we're going to look at the stained concrete and probably put those quotes back out and try to get those a little bit lower than that. A couple of the things that we come up, more of an emergency type situation, is our tasers came to end of life. We were having trouble getting batteries, was having trouble getting cartridges, was having trouble getting tasers. We were paying $15,000 a year, our maintenance for our tasers, so we upgraded. Problem is, to upgrade to the new tasers is $72,000 a year. But that is a very, very important life-saving piece of equipment for our officers on the street, and we felt that was very important to go ahead and do it now instead of try to put it off and have guys on the street without it. Now we're looking at body cameras. That's also something that is failing. We went through WatchGuard. WatchGuard is sold to a different company. Their service is not good. All of our equipment that we've had for about 10 years now is failing. The batteries won't last an entire shift. So we're also looking at that. We're getting quotes, just estimates on what it's going to cost, and that is probably going to be something that we're going to have to look at in the budget for next year, because that's going to be a pretty significant amount of money. So that's something that we'll be looking at in the future also. So with that being said, I think we've matched everything that we budgeted for. We worked very hard at keeping it what we budget for, but I learned from the 2 chiefs before me, my current chief and my past chief, is whenever someone asks for money, you always ask, is this something that you want, or is this something that we need? And they've both got a very reputation of being very stingy, and I have recently been told I'm learning that. So that has become my quotes too. So is there any questions?
One question.
Yes.
The communication system, is it linked to the 911 system?
Which communication system?
The one that, the 900,000?
Yes, that's actually software. That's our dispatch software, our records management software. We'll be able to write reports in it. It'll be our dispatch. It'll be our mapping in dispatch. It'll be our evidence. Everything, it all kind of links together. So if I'm out on the street and I run someone on the street, their driver's license, it automatically logs in too. So if I actually have to arrest them for a case, when I get in, all that information is already in the system. So it also saves us time. But all that goes through, that'll be our dispatch system also. And if they put something in there, if they type something in on their dispatch monitor, it'll pop up in my computer in my unit. And I also can get that on my phone or my computer or whatever other devices that I want to use.
Thank you.
Questions? Thank you very much, and I will say, Chief, thank you for what you do, and Chief Courier, we appreciate it. I know there's never enough money, but you guys both seem to make it stretch a long, long ways. That being said, we're at 6:30. I'm going to adjourn, and we will come back at 6:40. We're going to take 10 minutes.